What's going on YouTube? This week I'm recording a new song for my band Fearless Genius, and I thought it'd be cool to go and show you guys how I approach recording the drums. Although I am kind of trying a couple of new things today where I will be experimenting with different mic placements and different mic choices than I normally use, but we're gonna go and give it a shot, see how it goes, and we'll mix it. So the song is called Any Day Now, and what I'm going for is a really nice demo recording that I'll attempt to knock out all in one day, mixing and mastering included. So there'll be a link in the description where you can find the song on the Fearless Genius channel, and there'll also be a part 2 to this video where I'll show you guys how I ended up mixing the drums. So make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss it. Now without further ado, cue the montage. Alrighty, so I finished the general setup of the microphones, so I'm going to go ahead and go over what I did and why. So we're going to start over here with the room mics. I have two Audio-Technica AT2020s because I like to pan those left and right and get a really big room sound for the drum set, kind of make it sound a little more atmospheric. And over here on the kick drum, we've got a Rode NT1A and a Shure Beta 52A. So that one's, the Shure one's basically going to be kind of like the inside mic that's going to get a little more punch, and this condenser out here is supposed to be capturing more of the overall body of the kick drum and kind of low end. So I usually fix the two together so I can make EQ1 low and EQ1 high and blend them together. And what's important for that Rode, it's going over here through my Art Studio V3 tube preamp, and I just have the voicing set to flat. But the important thing here is that this allows me to bring the gain down on that condenser microphone, because normally it's going to be way too hot and clip. So that preamp allows me to bring down the volume so I can go ahead and use that condenser effectively. So with that idea in mind of using two kick drum mics to make the kick drum sound bigger, I'm attempting the same thing on the snare drum. My first time doing this, I'm using a Shure SM57 as the dynamic, and now I'm using a CAD pencil condenser as basically the condenser microphone. So again, we're going to try to capture attack with the SM57, and we're going to try to capture more body and warmth from the condenser. This condenser microphone definitely does not sound anything special. Last time I used it for overheads, I thought they sounded a little bit kind of on the crunchy side, and I feel like that might work in favor of the snare drum, trying to get the snare drum a little crunchy to help cut through the mix. So we're going to go ahead and try that, and maybe the low qualityness of the mic might actually benefit the sound. And for the rack toms, we're using a combination of a Sennheiser E609 and a Shure SM58. So those are going to be kind of getting some different sounds. And the floor tom, we have another Sennheiser E609. I'm kind of conscious trying to hopefully limit the amount of bass coming out of this floor tom, just to kind of tame it a little bit so it's not too unruly. We have a very tight space here between the ride cymbal and the floor tom, so I think having this microphone the way it's designed, where this is just the back, all this is going to reject the sound of this ride cymbal pretty effectively, when the front of it just gets the drum. So that should be good. For the overheads, we have a pair of SM57s. This is something that I've never really done before, but thought I'd give it a try. What I'm hoping to achieve is hopefully using a dynamic microphone instead of a condenser will capture a little bit less of the rest of the kit and a little bit more of just what it's pointed at, which is the cymbals. So we'll see how that works out. The other thing that I do is I use a measuring tape to measure these overheads a consistent distance apart from the snare. Right now they are about 39 inches from the snare. And that is to help keep phase, keep the mics in phase so that they don't sound small and weak. So a little bit about mic placement. It goes normally like this. If you point the mic at the center of the drum, you're going to get more attack. If you point it towards the rim, you're going to get more tone. What I go for, I usually try to get as much attack as I can pretty much out of all the drums, so I kind of try to point them towards the center. And it is always a good idea to check your microphone placement from multiple sides of the kit, because everything's slightly angled, so you might want to just check and see where it's at from different perspectives, and you might want to move it accordingly. So like from here, it looks almost like I want to scoot that one in a little bit more. You also want to make sure that the drummer is pretty comfortable, because if the drummer's like afraid of hitting microphones, or worse, if he isn't afraid of hitting microphones and he is banging up your stuff, that's not going to be good. But if he's uncomfortable, he's not going to do the best performance. So you're going to want to make sure that, yes, you can have everything like pristine, mic'd up and everything, but you want to make sure that it also is conducive to the player so he can get good takes, because the performance is going to really be the most important thing. The other thing, like I was mentioning with the floor tom, is you want the back of these microphones to be pointed at what you want to reject. So we got the back of this microphone trying to reject this cymbal, and the back of this one trying to reject that crash. So you kind of minimize your overall bleed. There will still be tons of bleed unless you go in with a bunch of gates on everything. But essentially, you want to try to minimize that so each close mic is as tight as possible. And usually you'd like to pull the kit out to the center of the room so you're kind of away from the walls as much as possible to minimize reflections. We do have a good amount of like paneling everywhere and a little bit of an arched ceiling, so we're going to get like a pretty decent room sound. For this demo that I'm making, we're just going to leave the drum set there so we don't have to move it and it's not kind of like in the way of everything. One other thing to consider when trying to get a good drum sound is the life of your heads. Basically, just like with playing guitar or something, or bass, if you have really old strings, they're going to not sound as bright and crispy as they can. So these heads have definitely some wear in them. Again, for the sake of this demo, I'm not going to really go through the trouble and expense of replacing all these heads. But another thing you may want to consider is having a well-tuned drum set. So that's something that usually my drummer Richie goes for, is that he tunes his drum set really well so that they sound good, you know, just like you want to tune your guitar before you go ahead and take a take. So it only helps. Following a really messy pile of cables here, we've got it plugged into our interfaces, which the first one is the Apogee Quartet, which only is 4 channels, so I have an optical out, optical in, whatever cable you want to call it, that is plugged into the back of the Scarlett 18i20 interface. So they are linked together, so we have a total of 12 inputs now, and I'm using 11. So we have all the mics going through here, and I've got my checklist on where they're all at. So we got the kick sub first, which is the condenser, then the kick in, then we got room left, room right. And I'm going from the drummer's perspective. So this one will be left, that one will be right, this overhead will be his left, and that one will be his right, so on and so forth with the panning. And I have all the tracks lined up like that. And you can see me in the computer screen. Hello. Alright, so here are the drums dry with no processing or anything on them. This is basically just the sound of the mics. The condenser mic that I put on the snare is pretty interesting. It's distorting quite a bit, and I think it can help add some grit and character to the snare, help it cut through the mix a bit, and yeah, definitely a good effect mic that's on there right now. Thanks so much for watching the video. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And if you have any questions or comments or concerns or anything, leave in the section below. And I'll see you guys in part 2 of this video.